welcome back. This is Chicken Philosophy, the Meccan Revelations, part 56, in which I'll pick up right where Edward left off in part 55. Hope everybody's doing well. Today, for the... where to put this? Got too many things. For the beverage, we have a Monecris diastris. It's like a Pegasus, I guess. Of coffee. Got regular old coffee with jaggery, not like sugar, but jaggery, basically sugar, same idea. And for the incense today, we have our smorgasbord of ouds. This is the point where I'm going to need to put these on. They just... So I can go by color, or I can go by region, name, whatever. Oud Damascus. I mean, he did settle in Damascus, so that's up there. Oud Bharat, I'm in Bharat right now. That's what you call India. Oud Samarkand, note to self. I'm not going to make Editor Edward do it, but note to self. Find out what that is. What is Samarkand? Should be able to point to that on a map. Oud Agna, I have no idea what this is. You might remember there was one. Oh, Persia. Oh, it even says Persia. Now that I've read there, I didn't realize there was fine print below explaining. Oud Bakana. Oud Arabia. Let's go with that one. Why not? Just to, it's purple. I'm mostly drawn to the purple. I was just in a place, I think you might have seen some footage of it before I popped on, in between the chicken and my face. We were in a place called Arabi, no relation that I know of. And there was an Indian guy that was giving us, explaining things about the area. And he had a full-on, intentional, it must have been intentional, let's say Charlie Chaplin mustache. Mein Kampf is a popular book in India among a certain political affiliation. I'm going to stop talking now because of the wonderful things he does. Okay, so yeah. Hand-rolled luxury oud. Let's see what this is like. Got coffee with jaggery and got too close to my nose. All right. No, it's nice. It smells nice. No complaints. It's not like striking me and making me declare that it's among my top 5 or anything, but it doesn't suck. It's good. Good stuff. All right. Oh, I found this. You remember the other day, I think it was Edward, probably it was Edward, who had all the pins, and he mentioned that there was one pin missing. That one. Will it focus? Focus. Focus. This was a pin my mom brought back from her London trip in '97. Anyway, so yeah, it was disturbing that when I realized I couldn't find it. First I was like, yeah, I couldn't find it just now, and then I was rewatching Martin Luther Part 1. Here it is. Why not? And I saw that I was wearing it, and then I started looking, and then I started looking more, then I started looking more, and then Pew was like, my dad's asleep, like you're making a lot of noise. And I was like, okay. And so I searched in the morning, like pulling old wooden drawers out that were squeaking and that kind of thing, being a little bit obsessed. So then the next day it was, believe it or not, it was in the first place I looked. because I remembered vaguely that I had, when we shifted, I took the most important things and put them all in one thing and then shoved it in this one place. And I looked, there was the thing, unzipped it, there it was. And a bunch of other things that I didn't even realize I was missing, like the little pewter Merlin statue I gave my dad for Valentine's Day that made him cry, that you heard me talk about in the Virulamium poem. Virulamium. It's a good poem. Check it out. Come back to this later, if you want. It's a poem my dad wrote about Virulamium. Anyway, what's Virulamium? Check out the poem. Anyway, and his ring, it's right here. He wore this every day that I knew him, from Cal State, Los Angeles. Anyway, he did go to Principia in 1968, so this was like post-grad stuff. Anyway, all right, enough preamble. Let's get to the Hafiz bibliomancy first of all. Now, last time I just let it flop open, so of course it was to a poem we had already read. That's how that works. The previous time, or sometime recently, we intentionally looked in the back because I realized that when I do this random thing, it tends to be somewhere in the middle, not the first bit, not the last bit. So for today, well, today this is where I happened to grab it, and I don't think I've read this before, so I'm going to read it. This is a poem by the Persian Sufi poet known as Hafiz, read out of this book, The Gift, the book I used to give everyone for Christmas, translated by Daniel Nadinsky. Thank you, Daniel Nadinsky. Here we go. I reign, not Iran, not Iran, not Iraq. I reign. R-A-I-N, not like I rule. No, I reign. Let's see where he's going with this. I reign because your meadows call for God. I weave light into words so that when your mind holds them, your eyes will relinquish their sadness, turn bright, a little brighter, giving to us the way a candle does to the dark. I have wrapped my laughter like a birthday gift and left it beside your bed. I have planted the wisdom in my heart next to every signpost in the sky. A wealthy man often becomes eccentric. A divine crazed soul is transformed into infinite generosity. Tying gold sacks of gratuity to the dangling feet of moons, planets, ecstatic mid-air dervishes, and singing birds. I speak because every cell in your body is reaching out for God. That's the end of the poem. What are they, the beatniks? Supposed to snap, right? Someone told me that once. It's good. It's good. I had this impulse. I hope you'll forgive me for my impulses. I would rate that poem on a poem scale. I mean, this is obnoxious. I'm the first one to talk about how shitty like the star system is when it comes to rating art. So I don't even want to do that. I will say that poem, I mean, it's Hafiz, and we kind of understand where a little bit, like we're learning to understand. Like if he had a a dogma, which he doesn't. If he had one, it would be this, or something very close to this. So we get to read Ibn Arabi, we get to read Michel Chodkiewicz explaining the stuff that he skipped translating. I get it. It's a lot. It's like a lot. And then we get to read Hafiz's poetry. And he's like the flower of the tree. I feel like this is like bark, roots, soil, you know, and Hafiz is the blooming flowers on the tree and the sunlight, you know, part of the equation, maybe the water. Not to say, like, the thing is, obviously, it would miss the entire point of what he's saying to give anyone credit, any human or any group of humans or any philosophy or idea, for that matter, credit for Hafiz being who he is and was. But the fuck was I talking about? The point is, that was a really good poem. I want to see how that compares. I mean, I know that this is an obnoxious thing to do. Like, I'm doing it consciously, ironically. You know what I mean? Like, but also, I just, in a divination spirit, I want to see what I open to. And that was toward the beginning, so we'll stay toward the beginning of this. This is my poetry. I mean, Edward Reeve's poetry. Frater BT is a name for Edward Reeve, and Gwydion is the name that Edward Reeve used to sign on his poetry. At least that was 20 years ago, and they've evolved since then, you know. 25 years ago. All right, toward the beginning. Production workers will get paid a lot for TV. Well, yippee for them. It was a haiku. I think Hafiz, if we're giving out awards, Hafiz, I knew he was going to get the award. I just wanted to see in what way. And it turned out it was that haiku. It's not a haiku, it's a senryu. It's part of my Intertunian senryu series. Like, this poetry book is probably very close to half Intertunian senryu, where we would get the news, like every day someone would send the news to all the employees of the entertainment union, whatever, and I would skim them and write haikus and send them to 400 people. And anyway, so that's what that was. All right, now let's get to the meat of the episode. Pick up where we left off last time. Music will change, no doubt. So that's what we're going with. I have no idea what you're hearing. This is Michel Chodkiewicz, italics. Ibn Arabi goes on to recall the fundamental metaphysical underpinnings of these distinctions in the peculiar nature of the inner correspondence between man and the world, i.e., quote, not God, end quote, end parentheses. Since both are created, in the words of a famous hadith, quote, according to the form, end quote, of God. Oh, so, okay. So both man and the world, right, okay, got it, never mind. Let's keep going. Since both are created in the form of God. All right. Ordinarily, however, people think of themselves as simply, quote, parts, end quote, of the world. Editor Edward, could you play that thing I'm thinking of right now? What was it last time? Meccan Revelation. He just came out and said it. Yeah, you're part of God, you're not part of God, you're in God. Carl's saying kind of the same thing. Yeah, sometimes I speak too quickly, and it's kind of like if you ask me, I would definitely have worded that differently, but I lapsed into the habit of wording it the way that most other people that I had heard talk about those ideas in my memory did, which I kind of actively try not to, but I was speaking quickly, so it's kind of interesting to reflect on that and be like, but I also want to apologize and call myself out. Part of? Fuck part of. There is no try. You're either God or you're not God. Not part of God. There's like, that's, no. 100%. That's my evangelizing for the day. All right. They think of themselves as parts of the world, as things within it, and it is only at the end of this purifying journey that the saints can realize man's true dignity and spiritual function as the, quote, perfect man, whose heart fully mirrors the divine reality, thereby accomplishing that perfection for which the world itself was created. All right, now we're getting to the Ibn Arabi. It's not italics, so I'm going to do the voice. So when the servant has become aware of what we have just explained, so that he knows that he is not bracket parentheses created end bracket parentheses according to the form of the world, but only according to the form of God, then God makes him his journey through his names, in order to cause him to see his signs, Quran 17:1, within him. Thus, bracket parentheses, the servant.
But the servant waits while the master baits.
End bracket parentheses, comes to know that he is, with a capital H, servant with a capital H, blasphemy? No, obviously not. I mean, not in reality, but like some people would say so. It's refreshing. It's refreshing how he speaks to just the core of the realities of how it is, as opposed to being like, well, according to my rector, Martin Luther said that Paul said that what Moses meant was the guy who told the other guy to cut the other guy's peepee off wants you to be a good person. You know, it's like at a certain point it falls apart and it's useless. Sorry, did I just say all that out loud? I'm sorry, I don't mean to disrespect the Abrahamic God quite so. Familiarity breeds contempt, you know, it's just what can you do? Whether or not that name is one of those described as, quote, beautiful, end quote, it is through those names that God appears in his servants, and it is through them that the servant takes on the different, quote, colorings, end quote, of his states, for they are names in God, but, quote, colorings, and, quote, bracket parentheses, of the soul, and bracket parentheses, in us. And they are precisely the, quote, affairs, end quote, with which God is, quote, occupied, end quote. So it is in us and through us that he acts, just as we, bracket parentheses only, and bracket parentheses appear in him and through him. 4 dots. To be fair, Ibn Arabi does quote the Quran, so, I mean, at a certain point, but where do you draw the line? Like, I'm being too generous to Ibn Arabi and not generous enough to... Thus, when God makes the saint travel through his most beautiful names to the other names and bracket parentheses ultimately and bracket parentheses all the divine names, he comes to know the transformations of his states and the states of the whole world. And bracket parentheses, he knows, end bracket parentheses, that transformation is what brings those very names, with a capital N, to be in us. Just as we know that the transformations of bracket parentheses our, and bracket parentheses states, bracket parentheses manifest, and bracket parentheses the specific influences of those names, 3 dots. So there is no name that God has applied to himself and he has not also applied to us through bracket parentheses his names and bracket parentheses. We undergo the transformations in our states, and with them we are transformed, bracket parentheses, by God, and bracket parentheses, dot, dot. Now, when bracket parentheses the spiritual traveler, and bracket parentheses, has completed his share of the journey through the names, and has come to know the signs which the names of God gave him during that journey, then he returns and bracket parentheses, quote, reintegrates, end quote, his self with a composition different from that initial composite nature, because of the knowledge he has gained which he did not have when he was, quote, dissolved, end quote, in the bracket parentheses, in the ascending phase of that journey, and bracket parentheses, right. The drop hitting the ocean and all that. Thus he continues to pass through the different sorts of worlds, taking from each world that bracket parentheses aspect of himself, and bracket parentheses, which he had left there, and reintegrating it in his self, and he continues to appear in each successive stage, bracket parentheses, of being, and bracket parentheses, until he arrives back on Earth. It makes me think it's if there's any place where you are to go through this, it's optional, obviously. It may be of assistance to let those places disappear, which is what it looks like when you pull that piece of yourself back from wherever, whatever level it's on. That's just an opinion. So, quote, he awakens among his people, end quote, bracket parentheses, like the prophet with a capital P, and bracket parentheses. There's your Martin, Paul, Moses there. Maybe. But then they hear him speaking a language different from the one they are used to recognizing as his. And if one of them says to him, quote, what is this, end quote, he replies that, quote, God made me journey by night, and then caused me to see whatever signs of his he wanted, bracket parentheses, me to see, and bracket parentheses, end quote. So those who are listening to him say, quote, you were not gone from us, so you were lying in what you claimed about that. And the jurist among them says, quote, this fellow is laying claim to prophethood, or his intellect has become deranged. So either he is a heretic, in which case he ought to be executed, or else he is insane, in which case we have no business talking with him. Thus, quote, a group of people make fun, end quote, of him, Quran 49:11. Others, quote, draw a lesson from him, end quote. From, quote, him, Quran 59:2. I say, why not do both? Sorry. While others have faith in what he says, and thus it becomes a subject of dispute in the world. But the faqih was unaware of, bracket parentheses, the true meaning of, bracket parentheses, his saying, quote, we shall show them our signs on the horizons and in their souls, dot, 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 end quote, Quran 41:53, since bracket parentheses God, and bracket parentheses, does not specify one group, rather than bracket parentheses any and bracket parentheses other. Therefore, whoever God may cause to see something of these signs in the way we have just mentioned should mention bracket parentheses only and bracket parentheses what he has seen, but he should not mention the way. It's not often I raise an eyebrow like that at Ibn Arabi. For then people will have credence in him and will look into what he says, since they will only deny what he says if he makes a claim about the way, bracket parentheses, he acquired that knowledge, end bracket parentheses. That's true. That's true. I don't take that advice. And, yeah. Now, you should know that bracket parentheses in reality and bracket parentheses, there is no difference with regard to this journey between ordinary people and the person bracket parentheses distinguished by and bracket parentheses this way and this characteristic. That is because bracket parentheses this spiritual journey and bracket parentheses is in order to see the bracket parentheses divine and bracket parentheses signs, and the transformations of the states of ordinary people are bracket parentheses likewise and bracket parentheses all signs with a capital S. They are in those signs, but, quote, they do not notice. End quote, Quran 21:53, etc. Hence, this sort bracket parentheses of traveler and bracket parentheses is only distinguished from the rest of bracket parentheses his fellow and bracket parentheses creatures, those who are veiled, Quran 83:15, by what God has inspired in his innocent being, either through his thinking and inquiry with his intellect, or through his preparation by polishing the mirror of his soul, for the unveiling of these signs to him by way of inner unveiling and immediate witnessing, direct experience, and ecstatic, quote, finding, end quote. Thus, ordinary people, bracket parentheses, when they object to those who speak of this spiritual voyage, end bracket parentheses, are denying precisely that within which they are and through which they subsist. So if bracket parentheses the traveler, end bracket parentheses, did not mention the way in which he obtained the inner knowledge of these things, no one would deny or dispute him. For all of the bracket parentheses ordinary and bracket parentheses people, and I do not exclude a single one of them, are, quote, making up likenesses for God, end quote. They have always agreed and cooperated in that, so not one of them criticizes another for doing it. God says, quote, do not make up likenesses for God, Quran 16:74, yet they remain blind to that sign. It's like, I see your point, but put the hammer down. That doesn't belong to you. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I get the smashing idols, but leave my idols alone. I fucking like them. You know what I mean? I have a lot. You want to see? One sec. But as for the friends of God, Quran 10:64-66, they do not make up likenesses for God is the one who makes up likenesses for the people, Quran 14:25, 24:35, because of his knowledge of the underlying intentions, parentheses of those symbols, and parentheses, since God knows, but we do not know. See Quran 16:74, 366-216. Thus the saint, bracket parentheses, the one truly, quote, close to God, end quote, end bracket parentheses, observes the likenesses God has made, and in that immediate witnessing, he actually sees precisely what connects the likeness with that which it symbolizes. For the likeness is precisely what is symbolized. with respect to that which contains them, but it is different insofar as it is a likeness. So the saint, quote, does not make up likenesses for God, end quote. Instead, he truly knows what God symbolized with those likenesses. He must not be the one with the hammer then. You don't hear about mad Sufis smashing things. That's not their thing. Cheers. No, they're much more into dancing. All right. Well, I hope that you enjoyed it. I did. I enjoyed both the Hafiz and the Ibn Arabi today, I have to admit. Yeah, no commentary. I think we were both there for it, felt rather compatible with a lot of other ways and traditions and spiritual languages, and that was kind of part of what he was saying, actually, because that whole running gag about the Christians are saying, what does Martin Luther say about what Paul says about what Moses says, where Ibn Arabi every now and then is dropping it's in the Quran, but if somebody is allergic to Martin Luther, allergic to Orthodox Christianity, allergic to anything Quran related, what's my point? I don't know. Next time it's going to be Edward again, because that's how the cycle goes, and it's going to be Carl Jung's Black Books, as it was in the beginning. And so this concludes the cycle of 15 for the people who stayed all the way to the end of whatever that was, Tao Te Ching, and heard the rambling about the 15 color wheel. Anyway, for those who didn't, click there and enjoy yourselves. And for everyone else, we'll see you next time. Actually, next is going to be Shingon. Pymander's doing a Shingon episode on Buddhist books. So if you want to catch up, this is the Shingon playlist on Buddhist Books Podcast. It's me in a different outfit. It's part of the organization of all the different books that I'm simultaneously reading, making it fun so that I'll stay interested and actually finish all these books. You know what I mean? Until then.